Good afternoon to you. Well, the latest from Eskom and Brian Molefe. Eskom says they've now received a full 30 million rand amount from the Eskom pension fund that it had paid to the fund for the former CEO Brian Molefe. Now, various courts have ordered that Molefe must pay back an amount of nearly 10 million rand after he received a total payout of 30 million rand after he'd been at Eskom for just a few months. There are various amounts of money at play here. Anton Van DerBijl is the head of legal at the trade union Solidarity, one of the unions there. Anton, good afternoon to you. This is slightly more complicated than it first appears. So we know that Eskom would have paid out money to the Eskom pension fund. Eskom says that the pension fund has now repaid it in full. But does that mean that Brian Molefe has necessarily paid back the nearly 10 million rand he had received from the pension fund?
Good afternoon, Stephen. If you look at the judgment of 2018, it's clear that the court made the scathing judgment that Molefe had to pay back the monies being paid to him. So what has happened is the Eskom has paid approximately 30 million rand to the Eskom Pension and Provident Fund, and they have paid approximately 10 million rand to Mr. Molefe. So it seems what has happened today is that the 30 million that was paid from Eskom to the EPPF was paid back from the EPPF to Eskom. It doesn't seem to me, and I've had quite a few discussions, it doesn't seem that Mr. Molefe had paid back the 10 million rand that was paid to him. So that seems to be outstanding. But the 30 million, in terms of the judgment, the 30 million rand being paid to the EPPF was paid back to Eskom.
I don't quite know why the pension fund would be paying the money back to Eskom if it hasn't got the money back from Brian Molefe. I mean, do we need to scratch our heads over this a little bit?
Yeah, well, in terms of the judgment, there's two separate prayers that was given. One was that Mr. Molefe paid back the monies to Eskom, but also that the EPPF needed to pay back the monies to Eskom. So irrespective of whether Mr. Molefe has complied with the judgment, there was still an order given against the EPPF to pay back the amount. So what I presume will happen is, or what has happened, the 30 million has been paid back, but then the EPPF will have a claim of 10 million rand against Mr. Molefe.
In a way, this court process around getting the 10 million rand back from Brian Molefe has been going on for a very long time, slightly strangely, because it was so obvious at the time that he should not have been receiving the money in the first place. And the Public Enterprises Minister at the time, Lynn Brown, played a key role in all of this.
Yeah, the judgment giving in 2018 was quite scathing. It used the words the payment was unlawful, and that some other underhanded action took place. So it's scathing, but what has happened is Mr. Molefe took the judgment of 2018, he took that to the SCA and then to the Constitutional Court. The Constitutional Court dismissed that action, and then last year when the EPPF made certain compliance applications against him, there was suddenly a problem with the quantum being given, or the quantum of the claim. Mr. Molefe then took that matter to the High Court. He said, no, the amount is not 10 million rand, it's 1.4 million rand. But the court, in March of this year, they dismissed that claim of Mr. Molefe and yet again affirmed that he needed to pay back 10 million rand. So there's quite a few years that has been spent on litigation. We see that litigation as just a means of Mr. Molefe not to comply with the order, but the wheels of justice will be served one or other time.
Anton Van DerBijl, thank you, head of legal at the trade union Solidarity.